When I went into the monastery, I thought it would be different for me. I thought I was going to go in there and be enlightened right away. I wasn't going to go in there and wait around for enlightenment, like everyone else who was just there hanging out, not taking it seriously, not getting to the point. I was determined that I was one of the chosen ones who was going to get immediately enlightened when I went into the monastery. So I went into it wholeheartedly, totally, intensely, giving everything I had to it. And when it came to the Rohatsashin, a meditation intensive which honors the Enlightenment Day of the Buddha on the 8th day of December, a time when the energy and the burning intensity of the monks in the monastery is so hot you can almost feel it in the air. When I entered the Rohatsashin, I was determined that during this sesshin I would reach enlightenment. I wasn't going to wait around like those other guys who weren't getting enlightened in the monastery. I was going to go for it, and it was going to happen now. So I came to the sesshin, the first day, second day, third day, the fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, seventh day. Still no enlightenment. I sat as hard as I could, everyone did, but still no enlightenment. And it came to the 8th day, when everyone is supposed to be sharing in the wonder of the enlightenment experience in the same way the Buddha did on his day of enlightenment, when he realized his own true nature upon seeing the morning star. And still nothing happened. And for the first time I was completely frustrated, disappointed, and I didn't know what to do. When it came to the ceremony that honored the Buddha's enlightenment, I was beside myself with despair. Here I had thought that I could really do it, that I had planned to, I had decided I was going to, that I had been chosen, and it didn't happen. Never had I felt such great disappointment, and I had no idea what to do next. After that sesshin, I kept going for another year, and then a year after that, and still I did not have any deep enlightenment experience. And so then, after 2 years without a deep enlightenment experience, I went to my teacher, Mumon Roshi, and I said, "I'm leaving. I can't do it here. It's not working. I'm going away to sit by myself." And Mumon Roshi looked at me for a long time, and he said, "That's fine. You can go. But what happens if you don't get enlightened?" And I answered him, "I'll think about that when it doesn't." I took everything out of the monastery. I left prepared for never coming back, and I headed for the mountains. And I went here and there in the mountains, sitting by myself, sitting as hard as I could, not even knowing what day it was, not even knowing how much time I was spending there. I just went and sat and sat and sat in various places in the mountains. And I remember well this one place when I was between Yamaguchi Prefecture and Hiroshima Prefecture. I was sitting on top of this one mountain. I hadn't seen anyone for many days, and suddenly someone was coming up the mountain. Of course, in the mountains, people are friendly to each other, because there are not so many people in the mountains. I was doing zazen there, and they came up to me and asked if I was a person of training. And I told them yes, I was. And they asked how long I'd been there, what I was doing. And then they told me how lucky I was. And at these words, I was so deeply struck that my whole life was again changed. They said to me, "We are also a kind of people of practice. We do the chanting of the Buddha's name. But we aren't lucky like you that we can take our whole life and give it up for training. We have to work from Monday to Saturday. And in our tiny time of freedom, from Saturday night to Monday morning, we come up on the mountain and practice our chanting of the Buddha's name. But you are so lucky. You are able to devote your whole life to training. And we're so envious of you that you are able to do that." And at that I was completely knocked out. I realized the deep meaning of what they were saying. For them it was quite straightforward and nothing at all particular. But it made me realize what I'd been missing. I had been doing, in my own small, narrow way, exactly what I wanted to do. What they were having to do was within a social situation of having to work, having to keep their training going, having only a very small amount of time to devote to it totally. And here I was, already blessed with this chance to give everything I had to training, to devote myself completely to training. And I was running away from that and cutting myself off, shutting myself up in a small, narrow place in my mountain training all by myself. And I realized right then the mistake I've been making. And I went right back to the monastery. I knew what I had to do now. And at that moment it was like all of my burdens dropped off, as if someone had hit me on the back and everything was awakened within. I realized that there was nothing I needed to do for myself in the first place. If every moment that came along I just took it as it was, then there was nothing that could be a problem to me anymore. That small, narrow way in which I had been looking at my enlightenment, my thing to have to do. I have to do this for myself. That is what had been bothering me all along, from the very beginning, through that day on the mountain when I realized that there was no self to be bothered with it. I had been crushing myself and making myself miserable, worrying about this problem of my enlightenment and realizing it for myself, making myself come to a conclusion that was in fact found in the living of every single day. If I did nothing, if I didn't even worry about my own problems, things always came to me. And those things that came to me in every single day, to accept those was my training and my way of expressing my enlightened mind. No matter what it was that came to me every day, the next thing that came, the next situation I found myself in, to live that totally as my training was what I had to do. Not to go isolate myself up on a mountain, closed off from everyone, turning them all away, and worrying about my own small state of mind. That wasn't the point at all. But to go and be what every day brought to me, that was my practice and my expression of my enlightenment. And ever since I realized that, my whole life has been completely different. I know there is no problem for myself, because there is no one there to feel that there is a problem. Just to take what every day brings and do that with my best, total, wholehearted effort as a person of practice. That was the way to live. Often enlightenment or kensho or satori is considered to be some kind of unusual experience or something external or some kind of special phenomenon. But it's not like that. There may be some kind of sudden revelation or some kind of sudden perception, but it's not something that is that unusual or that strange and foreign that we come upon or that comes upon us. What it is an ability to see without any interruption of the ego, without any filtering of the ego. And since we're all walking around seeing things through our ego filter almost all the time, to suddenly be able to see without that filter is a surprise. But it is nothing that we have ever not had. They say that the mind of a baby is something we can compare this to. A baby isn't seeing things from the egoistic place. It is seeing directly and clear. It's the exact same kind of thing when we are seeing without the ego filter. We see that there is nothing to be analyzed in it. When you are seeing a flower, you're not thinking that it's red. Or seeing a bird, you're not thinking what its name is. You are just seeing directly. When we talk about enlightenment, we are talking about that mind which is perceiving in every moment without the obstruction of an egoistic filter. The experience of that mind and realizing where it is and realizing where it is coming from is what is called enlightenment or kensho or satori. It is not some kind of supernatural state of mind that we are able to enter or that comes upon us. It is not like some kind of altered state of consciousness. To think that we are trying to do this practice for some kind of narrow experience for the individual, thinking that we are going to come upon some big experience someday. This is a very low-level understanding of what this enlightenment is. It's a return to our basic state of consciousness, which we possess all the time but are always cluttering up with extraneous views and with the ego. The ego is consistently on top of us. It's always there. And if we can succeed in clearing it out, what we can see without it is truly surprising. And that kind of surprise, that kind of wonder, that kind of enjoyment and joyfulness is obvious, and it does truly happen. The difference for that ego is a big difference, but it's not something we come to externally. It's something we come to internally. We realize it by getting rid of things, not by adding on an abnormal state. And once we realize this state, once we recognize this, we say, this is that mind that is without all of those things. And then to live every moment without that egoistic filter on that inner eye, that is what has to be done. That is the real goal. And that is the larger part of our training practice. Once we have recognized that new way of seeing, that new eye, an inner eye, once we have encountered that, then we must nurture the ability to encounter every moment of our lives from that clear, pure place. To live in that is the most important part of the practice. To be able to take that clear mind, which is not covered by ego, and keep that going. To live in that place all the time, that is what has to be done. And until we know what it is, we can't keep it going. So that first understanding of where that clear place is often what people sometimes call enlightenment, or kensho, or satori. But to be able to come to every moment with that state of mind, that is what's most important.